Lord Dunmore was a Scot like Spotswood, and like many of the other people who come to Williamsburg, he's of Scottish descent. His proper name was John Murray. He was the 4th Earl of Dunmore. Dunmore sat as a Scottish representative peer in the House of Lords from 1761 to 1774 and from 1776 to 1790. He married a very beautiful young lady by the name of Charlotte Stuart, daughter of the 6th Earl of Galloway. The Dunmores were related, first cousins once removed. They were very, very close friends with King George III. So once again, we have the real hand of the royal control. 7 of the Dunmore's 9 children were born between 1759 and 1768, before Dunmore was governor of New York, 1770 to 71, or Virginia, September 25th of 1771 through June of 1775. He joined the British Army in 1756 and served in Parliament in the 1760s as one of the representative Scottish peers, but he was not appointed to colonial governorships until much later. The 8th child was born on December 17, 1770, which means that Lady Dunmore was pregnant when her husband arrived in Virginia in the summer of 1771. She left this child at about 3 years old in England when she sailed for Virginia in early 1774, arriving at Yorktown and Williamsburg February 26th of 1774. Son William, born 1763, died in 1773 in England, so Lady Dunmore traveled to Virginia with 6 of her children. Lady Virginia, their 9th child, was born in Virginia in December of 1774. Dunmore was absent from Virginia during his governorship only for the few months he was in the Ohio country during Dunmore's War, say July through October of 1774. When she lands at Yorktown, they had a great celebration for her and they had a great party, and they move into town and they set off fireworks and they set off a cannon, and Lady Dunmore was pleased, no doubt. Unfortunately, someone was badly burned setting off some of the fireworks, and that disturbed her a great deal. But it really set off, those fireworks, I've often thought, set the tone for her time here. Because when she gets here, we're right at the point where the tea has gone overboard in Boston. The Burgesses are speaking things which the governor thought were inflammatory, to put it nicely. But fireworks seem to be a proper metaphor for her time here. Right after she gets here, the Burgesses are dissolved by her husband and they are sent packing the very next day. They hold the ball to welcome Lady Dunmore. So all this politics is swirling around her as she's trying to move into the governor's palace and figure out what she's going to do and how she's going to handle all these things that have been presented to her. Lord Dunmore, like many governors, was a tough fighter. His object was to get rid of the Shawnee, so he is well known for fighting the native people. The treatment was almost unbelievable, but again, as with the African Virginians, it is a part of our history, and Lord Dunmore was a big fighter. He was stubborn, to say the least, and he did not approve of the colonials having any say in what was going on. He wanted them to be in their place. He was above and everybody else was below. Lord Dunmore eventually flees Virginia. Lady Dunmore has to be evacuated from the palace a couple of times, and eventually, to keep her safe, they flee onto a British man-of-war over at Yorktown. A little bit later, they end up in New York, and from there return to England. Lord Dunmore continued his political life. The American Revolution, the loss of the 13 colonies, was just a little blip on his career path. He went right on being a royal governor. He went right on being a buddy of the crown. He served, most of people we know would think it would be wonderful to be banished to the Bahamas. He was governor of the Bahama Islands from 1787 to 1796. Lord Dunmore was not happy with the unrest in Williamsburg, and he was even less happy when he realized that it was a lot wider spread than when he was governor. When he left to go over to the ship, HMS Foy, he gave orders for a lot of military work to be done, and in his name, a lot of plantations along the Virginia coast were plundered. A lot of people were frightened to death, and there were people who thought that he would even go after the wives of some of the leaders in the house. He burned the city of Norfolk. That's his own area to be ruling, but he thought the best thing to do was level it. So he played pirate. Speaking of pirates, he played pirate up and down the Virginia coast. So Lord Dunmore left us with kind of a bitter taste in our mouths for the ruling class. By that point, the resolution for independence was bubbling. All the colonies were talking to each other. That business of the tea tossed overboard in 1773 in Boston may have washed ashore in Virginia. That voyage was full of tea, and people began to realize that it wasn't going to go away quietly. And by the time Lord Dunmore fled Williamsburg in June 1775, people were winding up to go fight him, and he knew that he needed to get out of there.